call.
Representative Adams?
Here.
Bailey?
Here.
Bordelon?
Here.
Casper?
Here.
Chase?
Here.
DeSiller Fleming?
Here.
Crickman?
Here.
Gustafson?
Here.
Hanscom? Kotowski?
Here.
Lambert? Marley? Marshall? Martin?
Here.
Massett?
Here.
McDermott?
Here.
Melendez?
Here.
Mello Miller?
Here.
Merritt?
Here.
Monahan?
Here.
Newsom?
Here.
Oliver? Pasqualini?
Here.
Perry?
Here.
Powers?
Here.
Pacino? Quinn? Richards?
Here.
Rogers?
Here.
Stanford?
Here.
Starkley? Stevenson?
Here.
Irma Streeter?
Here.
James Streeter?
Here.
Strode?
Here.
Washington? Washington?
He's going to be late.
Oh, okay. Wells?
Here.
Whitehouse? Whitney?
Here.
Eben?
Here.
That's 31.
We have a quorum. We have 31 members, and I want to just say that Representative Oliver, Lambert, and Marshall have indicated they can't join us tonight, and Representative Whitehouse indicated he might be late. We're going to start out with a count that we missed on our last meeting, which is account 1035, and Representative Newsom will start out with the minutes from the Public Works Committee. Thank you.
Good evening. So this next set of minutes is going to be from the April 25th, 2019 meeting minutes for the Public Works Committee. So Representative Town Meeting, Public Works Committee, April 25th, 2019 meeting minutes, Groton Senior Center, Classroom A. Meeting was called to order at 6:40 p.m. Committee members present were Representative Newsom, Wells, Massett, Stanford, and Merritt. Also present were Representative Kotowski, Town of Groton Public Works Director Gary Schneider, Assistant Director Chris Lund, and Public Works Supervisor Stacy Ullman Leach. New business, count 1035, Public Works, on page 114 of your book. A motion was made by Representative Newsom for $6,108,332. The motion was seconded by Representative Merritt. Discussion. Director Schneider, Assistant Director Lund, and Supervisor Ullman Leach introduced themselves. Director Schneider discussed the highlights of the Public Works budget shown on page 114. It was noted that the Town Council reduced the Public Works budget by $7,000 because Pleasant Valley School had not been turned over to the town yet. The Fitch High School robotics team utilizes space there, and the Board of Education still uses the school for storage. There was a quick review of past school closures. Colonel Ledgerd School, closed in 2008, is being marketed. Groton Heights School, turned over in 2008, may soon be commercially occupied. Eastern Point School was demolished. The Marine Magnet School, built on that site. Fitch Mill School, emptied in 2006 and turned over to the town in 2008, is now the Groton Community Center, with wings B, C, and D presently being used. William C. Seeley School is on the market now that all the Parks and Rec programs are at Fitch Middle. An additional $14,000 in overtime is being requested due to increase in oak trees falling due to gypsy moths and drought. When trees fall across the roads at night, the police call Public Works to clear them. Trees are cut up just enough to be removed from the road, but not disposed of until later. It should be noted that Overtime Cost Center, 5104, FYE 2019 estimate, the figure of $87,560 appears low, especially given that the additional money for overtime is being requested. Director Schneider felt that the adjusted 2019 estimate and estimate 2019 numbers were inadvertently swapped. An email to Town Manager Burt on 5/1 provided clarification that the 2109 adjusted number is correct, but the 2109 estimate is artificially low. This is confirmed in an attached email from Supervisor Ullman Leach. The explanation for what occurred between that estimate and today, I'll request the the director to explain that. The next topic was streetlights. $23,455 being requested due to Groton Utilities rate increases for streetlights. The town obtained a no-interest loan from Eversource to replace the high-pressure sodium streetlights with LED lights. Groton Utilities performed a rate study to determine the cost per light fixture for the City of Groton streetlight replacement. The new rate adds in the capital cost of the LEDs but keeps it there permanently, so the cost for the LEDs is now higher than when the high-pressure sodium lights were installed. $25,211 is requested for electricity costs associated with Groton Utilities rate hike and the additional cost for the Groton Community Center that's now come online. It was explained that the community center is utilized nearly every night. The use of the community center also accounts for the additional $19,000 being requested for heating oil. As shown on page 114, $8,000 was requested for costs associated with Pleasant Valley School and Colonel Ledgerd School. Of the $8,000, only $1,000 was for Colonel Ledgerd, namely electricity costs including the fire alarm system. The other $7,000 was to be spent on Pleasant Valley. However, since the building has not been turned over to the town council removed that $7,000 from the initial number. $40,000 is requested to overhaul the chiller at the police station. The chiller is an air conditioning unit. This is its second rebuild, and it's not just a matter of replacing a few spare parts. The whole unit has to be rigged out and shipped to the vendor's shop to be refurbished and tested before being reinstalled. Additional information was provided by the attached email. The chiller was installed in 1999 when the addition to the dispatch center was built. The first overhaul was in 2008 after 21,251 hours and cost $37,400. The unit presently has 49,008 hours, and the vendor recommendation is an overhaul after every 20,000 hours. $81,700 is requested for the MS4 stormwater effort. Groton monitors 449 outfalls throughout town. They all have to be examined and potentially tested. If a contaminant is found, then they'll work upstream until the source is identified. Over the next 2 years, funding will be used to do sampling, hire an engineering firm to develop solutions, and pay for lab time. Later, the town will look at directly connected impervious areas, or DCIAs. These are places where the source of contamination can be directly located. An example would be rain gutters on a business that wash across a parking lot, sending motor oil into the storm drain. Those need to be reduced. Mitigations can be as simple as turning the gutters to point in a different direction. Representative Stanford asked if the state can fine people for not complying. Assistant Director Lund stated that yes, the state could, but they would rather that you just do the work. Once the first 5 years are done, the effort just becomes a matter of monitoring. First, the outfalls will be addressed, then catch basins. So although there's a large capital expense up front, it will come at some point just periodic monitoring. $54,470 is requested for costs associated with the retiring custodian. The retired custodian was replaced by a contractor for a lower rate. Representative Newsom asked why additional money is being requested if a town employee is replaced with a less expensive contractor. If anything, the cost should go down. The director said he'd provide an email with the details, but essentially appears we're hiring another person for $54,000, but in reality we're getting rid of one retired person and replacing him with a less expensive person. The follow-up email attached stated that had that person not retired, the salary and overtime accounts would be up $68,000 rather than $54,570. Questions came up about the sustainability project manager position. It was explained that the person in that position was involved with streetlight replacement and natural gas installation and is presently working in the new middle school project. Representative Kotowski asked if the position can be eliminated. Presently, that person's salary is being charged to a new school bond referendum, hence the $97,000 negative salary adjustment. A no motion was put on the floor by Representative Newsom for $6,101,332 and seconded by Representative Massett. This reflects the figure passed by the town council. A vote was taken on the amended figure of $6,101,332 for account 1035, Public Works. Motion passed unanimously.
All right, is there any discussion of those minutes? Okay, seeing none, would you like to put a motion on the floor?
Yes, Madam Moderator. I'd like to move $6,101,332 for account 1035, Public Works.
Second.
Is it 335 or 332?
Okay, we have a motion on the floor for account 1035, Public Works. It's been made by Representative Newsom for $6,101,332, and it's been seconded by Representative Bailey. Is there any discussion or questions on this? Representative Katowski?
I have a question that I asked the Director of Public Works about in the meeting regarding the Sustainability Project Manager. I asked the question, but I'm going to try to ask it a different way today and hope for a different answer. One of the best ways an organization may have to realize that a position is not necessary is when it is vacated and the work is no longer being done, proving the position is not necessary. If you look on page 119, the Sustainability Project Manager, which is a non-union position, is in there for $90,919. This position is vacant for several years while the person in the position is on loan to the Board of Ed for the school project. Please see line 5119, salary adjustments on page 118. Notice there's almost an $8,000 increase. My question is, if no one is doing the work in this position this year and for possibly several years, why is it in the budget? And for those RTM members who are here next year, if it's still here, you might want to question it then as well. But like, why would we keep that position in the budget if the work is not being done?
Mr. Burt, could you answer Representative Katowski? And I'm also curious, so the 5119, that 97,000, is that going to the Board of Ed? Is that correct?
They're paying
Just-
for him if they don't need it.
It's not Board of Ed money, it's.
I mean, the
school project.
But it goes into this budget. There's a flow through.
Goes
into this budget.
Correct, we have to come forward here and then.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's not coming out of the general fund at all, though. It's just flowing through here for tracking purposes. The position exists, it's just doing the schoolwork, so it's coming out of the bond money to this budget for tracking. So it needs to be in this budget.
But no one's doing the work. So no one's.
They're doing the, I mean, it's that same position, they're just doing school right now.
No, well, we were told at the, well, I don't know, what I heard at the committee meeting was that no one's doing the work. That's what
Well, they are doing the schoolwork, it's different
No,
work,
no,
but it has
wait,
to flow through the
no one's
department.
doing the Sustainability Project Manager's current job description, because he is on loan to the school project, and he hasn't done
But he reports
sustainability
through-
for a long time.
He reports to public, you need to have some position in this department for that, and that's this position. Now, once that schoolwork's done in 2 years, it'll have to be reevaluated. Once that outside money is done, we'll have to reevaluate whether to bring it back into this budget. But right now, no money's coming out of the general fund for it.
Okay, whatever. Thank you.
Coming out of the bond money, yeah.
So is the person in the Sustainability Project Manager, is he actually doing sustainability work, or is he helping to be the general contractor for the school project? Could you describe that project, that position?
The process we're following here is the same process we did with phase one of the school, so this is, I don't want to say nothing new. What the person is doing is, he's the town's representative, works in my department, the town's representative, and manages our project manager and the construction manager at risk. So he's doing that. Does he consult on some of the sustainability issues or some of the projects that we've done in the past? Yes. Is he working on full projects? No, because that would not be proper, because he's being charged with a school bond project. So if there's a couple questions, the person is willing to delve in a little bit on stuff, but right now, full-time, he's working on 3 of the school projects to get them on board online. We're looking at having the middle school done June of next year, 2020. The elementary's 1 year later, so that's a real aggressive of a schedule. So he's working full-time. So does he consult? Yes, right. Solar, he'll be probably looking at solar on the landfill. We're going back to that, and maybe on some of the buildings that, but most of his time is spent on the school project.
So when there's $97,000 coming in and that salary position is at 90,000. I'm curious where that extra 7,000 is kind of sucked in.
Don't know. That should just be a salary, whether the 5109 has other salary reimbursements, I don't think so. Let's say,
Cindy, do you know offhand?
Okay.
She said it
Usually
could be
benefits don't come in. Thank you. Representative Newsom?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. So is the way to look at this, like this person is on loan to the Board of Ed, they're paying a salary, but they still belong to your department, so you're not paying their salary, the Board of Ed's paying their salary, but they're still part of your department, but just on loan, right?
What was the answer? I didn't hear.
If everyone's sitting on loan to the Board of Education, the Department of Public Works is responsible for the construction, so he's on loan to the school project,
Okay.
not to the Board of Education. So don't look to the Board of Ed for any money or anything else. It's my department that's responsible for the construction. So we're building 3 schools for the Board of Ed.
Representative Whitehouse?
So I heard a very good question from Representative Gutowski that I haven't heard an answer for, which is what work is not being done because the sustainability project manager is not in Public Works right now. What is his job description? What's he do?
From what I could tell, it's an ever-evolving job where they're seeking grants for special projects. It's all special project driven, so essentially not out there looking, other than he's working with a couple of companies on solar right now. So essentially it's just that part's not being done right now. However, the council has started the sustainability effort with that new task force. They're looking at some of what should be done, and I think what we'll do is see in a couple of years, once this is done, is this position still needed or not? But in the meantime, though, it didn't pay to create a brand new job description since it's the same person for only a 3-year period. So.
Right. So you're saying it may make sense to eliminate this in the future, but it doesn't make sense to do it right now because that would create additional administrative complications or costs or whatever to do so. So this is an administrative thing we're seeing, not actually a plan with solid action. Is simply you're temporarily there, and then when he comes back, then you'll figure out what to do with the position and everything else. All right, thank you.
Representative Pasqualini?
I'm getting it's a pass-through, but we're approving the budget with that position for that amount of money. No. Now, the Board of Ed, well, the grant for the schools is going to pay that. Where is that money going?
Into that department.
But we're already giving money in that department.
No, it's 5119, salary reimbursement on the page 118.
But the position's still showing as an amount.
He's doing work, and then he's getting reimbursed through the school project. That money's just going to be given from the school project fund. You can't have a position in the school project fund. You have to have it in a department, so that money just gets transferred over.
But there's no upfront money. It's calculated in the budget as upfront money, unless I'm understanding it wrong. I get there's a position, I get it's getting backflowed, but it almost be a position with 0 salary because the money's coming from
Well, you have to
the
still show the
schools.
salary, regardless of where the funding source
But
is
now we're
coming
giving
from.
the money for it.
You have to show the-
Where's the deduction part? If my budget's $6 million with him in it, and he's getting reimbursed, say he makes 100,000, then it should be 100,000 less.
Oh, we're asking for less from the general fund is what it is. You're just not asking, if it was being funded doing the sustainability, the general fund request in this budget would be that much higher. So we
Okay.
reduced the request.
That's what I'm trying to
Yeah, yeah. The request is
understand.
reduced, yeah.
Okay.
嗯
Mm-hmm. Representative Chase?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. On page 114, there's $17,000 increase for miscellaneous unidentified repair to town building. Is that a normal line item for this budget?
Could you repeat that, the part you were saying? Sorry.
$17,000 increase for miscellaneous unidentified repair to town buildings.
It's something that the department has requested for. We have several line items that are just for plumbing, electrical, heating, that we just budget a lump sum of money from. And it's a guesstimate, it's an estimate of what we, looking forward, think we're going to spend. It is somewhat based on what we've spent in the past years. What we've seen in these two line items that that fund their maintenance and repair for town buildings is over the last 10 years, I've seen a reduction of about $900,000 to repair the town buildings that I'm responsible for. So these line items are going up a little bit, but we don't have the ability, I don't think anyone does, to take a look at, what water heater is going to break, what the light isn't going to function well. So we're asking for a little bit more money in these general accounts. It's what we budget, but how we expend it, there's a ticket, there's a line item, there's a purchase order for each one of the expenditures.
So if you didn't have this little slush fund, what would you do?
Well, there's no such thing as a slush fund. They're all accountable money. What may not happen is when these lights go out, if there's 3 lights in here and there's 2, 4, 6, 8 in here, we don't replace them. There's one of these lights that are sitting out on the canopy that have the globe broken. I want to replace that, so we just don't replace it. We do then what would be critical needs. The exit signs have to work, but the other signage doesn't. If there's a light fixture that doesn't function well, we don't repair it. If there's 5 toilets and we don't need 4, we close the stall. It's just maintenance money, what we have. Any extras, most of the departments would like some stuff done. I'm not going to say little extras, maybe little betterments. We're not even doing those betterments of moving offices around or providing better ventilation and that. So that's where it would come from. It's just like your home budget. You want to program as much as you can, but you're going to expend it properly, and some things just won't get done. But over 10 years, $900,000 less in maintenance and repair on town buildings.
Thank you.
So I may have missed this in the minutes, and I apologize. I noticed that there's $14,000 that's going up from the dead trees in overtime, but in account 5104, that account has gone up by $120,000. Is that for the schools, or what is that extra $120,000 in overtime for? And
So I believe, if I may answer.
Sure.
Please.
I believe that was the question that I was alluding to earlier, where the overtime pay for 5104, what you see for the estimate for 2019 is only $87,000, right?
Yeah.
But in actuality, between when that number was put together and now, those costs have come up, and I'll let the director talk about that, because that was the question we had asked, was why are we asking for more overtime when it looks like we're not even spending what we had for last year?
The department starts putting the budgets together in November. So we're just starting the year. In November, we are not even starting the snow season. So we do some estimates of what we have, and as we progress through, we're talking to the manager and the finance director as they move the numbers through. We do take a look at certain items look at certain line items, and overtime was one of them. When the budget went to print, or was about to go to print, we only had one snow call out. It was a late winter, and then came the freeze. Then came the icing storms and that. So there's more overtime that was expended. So one is that the estimate was just a guess of what we had based on what we were spending so far. And that was on one call out. We had a total of 8 call outs. Not much snow, but there's a lot of ice out there. So that number came up, I think we're closer to $160,000 expended. The way we put a budget together, we take a look at our overtime for snow, the last 5 years, throw out the high and low, and then average 3. Then the remaining 3 years, we average them add them together, divide by 3. It is an estimate of what we will require to perform the snow. And then, of course, we add the other overtimes in. And as the chairman had stated, we are seeing a large amount of overtime being expended due to the tree issue. That's not only happening in the town of Groton, but it's throughout southeastern Connecticut, through all of Connecticut. Southeastern Connecticut's had 2 years of droughts and several years of gypsy moths, and it's killing the trees. We've been fairly lucky in the area here because Eversource has been out trimming in our area, so they've been trimming out some of the dead trees. But these are the ones that are totally ours. They're not near wires or not. They fall across the road, and we need to move them to clear the travel way.
Just to add on, in 18 we actually spent 211,000, and this is only 204, 205,000. So it's still below what we did last year and actually spent.
Representative Bordelon?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Looking on page 117, lease fees, I see an increase of over about $10,000. Could you explain that a little bit?
Luckily, we do lease out several of our sites for cell towers. So the purchasing agent goes through all of the sites that we do have and the carriers that are on those towers. And those contracts or those leases, that's where we get our funds from. So those historically have been from the cell towers. We have cell towers at the police station, we have cell tower at the Wells Road landfill, and then at Flanders Road landfill. And there's numerous carriers on the towers, so it's all cash coming in.
Thank you. Looking at the $40,000 planned on the rebuild on page 114, it describes it here on the ACs. My understanding of that short paragraph is it's functioning right now as we speak, correct?
Oh, absolutely. This is one of the planned maintenance replacements. This unit is what they call a chiller. It creates cold water, it gets pumped through the building, and then at the areas where there are the units, the fan coils are, then a fan blows across either a hot coil or a cold coil, and it provides cooling for the whole police station. What you want to do is take that unit down, of course, in the winter.
Yep.
And every 10 years is a recommended rehab of that unit, and they literally have to rig it out of the building, take it back to the factory. It's a pump, bearings, all that tight tolerance stuff that needs to be done. They certify it and bring it back in.
So considering it won't be maintenance until the winter just because of the way that the use of it, is it something that we're trying to make it a zero mill rate? Is it really economical to take $40,000 to spend towards this now? I mean, can we, what's the time frame on this if we didn't do it?
The recommendation is to have the funding available in July so we can get the contractor to come in, not September, whenever the cool season starts, probably October, November of this fiscal year. There's always a case. You could postpone it, just like the transmission in your car. It may last another month. It may last another year. If it only lasts another month, you're walking in this building. I need no air in the middle of winter, but they then had to have an emergency repair on this item. It could be costly, and then the police station is without any air conditioning. The police station is a sealed building. It's also an emergency management center and all that neat kind of stuff. A lot of computer equipment that's in it. So this is planned maintenance on it every 10 years, about every 20,000 hours.
Oh, I didn't see the 10 years on here, that's why. Okay, thank you.
Is that why it's not in the capital improvement budget? Because it's supposed to be any kind of project that's over $25,000 that is a capital asset, a project or acquisition, and it seems like it would fall into it. And I know I've discussed this with you before, things like these projects. How do you decide whether you're going to put it in a CIP or in your line item?
It's, I go by, if it's a maintenance item, if we are not replacing it, we're fixing it. We're going to some parts in it, then it should be in a maintenance budget. If not, if we were replacing the unit itself in kind, then it would be in the capital budget. And that's historically what the department has requested in the CIPs. Those are replacements, not maintenance.
Okay. Road maintenance seems like it's in CIPs, however. I would beg to differ there. Representative Mello Miller.
Thank you, moderator. Can you walk me through, we're going to go to I just had it. But the snow and ice control, and then I know that you just mentioned something about overtime, and it looks like there's an increase in overtime of $117,318. And I know that you said it was, it's unplanned, we can't predict the weather. But when I look at the cost center for snow and ice control, it says that it provides material and overtime for parks maintenance personnel, so that wouldn't be public works. So I'm curious, if we're giving $117,000 for overtime, wouldn't it be more cost effective to hire someone part-time in the winter to assist in that instead of paying all of this overtime?
And I'm going to say that the basic for small towns, large towns, even the state of Connecticut, you have a core of employees that know the routes, that have the good equipment to go out there and do the work, and there's straight time and time and a half and overtime. If there were blizzards, then you have contractors to come in. The state of Connecticut DOT has, I think, 600 trucks, and they supplement with contractors. Now, with contractors, if you follow DOT, you're going to have to guarantee them work. They're just not going to show up. The Board of Education, about 15, been here 35 years, maybe 20 years ago, had contractors that come on to plow their schools, and Wes Greenleaf was at the time. He was calling me all the time because his contractor wasn't showing up. His contractor was doing his other work first and then coming to the Board of Ed to plow out the things. Contractor wouldn't show up, the equipment would break down, so it was reliability. So here we have a core of employees, personnel that know the routes, they are reliable, they show up for work, they have good equipment. If you want to contract out, you can't contract out the risk or liability. So now we're still holding that liability. If the plow truck plows into somebody, or if we don't plow a road properly, if the school buses can't get there, we are still liable for that. What we do limit is the overtime as much as possible. The police do call us out when the roads get slippery. I mean, they're the ones on the roads. They know the road conditions, so they call us out. But as the storm ends, we slowly collapse our routes down. Everyone helps each other and then gets out of here as quick as possible. So that was a long story on that. There is just a basic core of personnel that do the snow. They know the routes. Our goal is to keep the schools open, because if you keep the schools open, the parents who are hourly employees, they go to work. If not, they stay home or have to make arrangements for their children, and then it just kind of it's just not good if the roads aren't open. So we do look at it, and it is an estimate. There are years we turn money back. There's years I've had to go to the town manager and ask for supplemental appropriations because it's been really a rough winter. And the previous year when we had $211,000 worth of overtime, that was mostly all snow.
Yeah, I'm definitely not going after anyone that's removing the snow. I've heard many compliments from parents from other districts that say Groton is wonderful, and the snow operators that are out there all hours are wonderful. My question is just really with the concern of $117,000 for overtime. And if there was somehow a way to condense that just a little bit when we're trying to save the taxpayers money, $117,000 for overtime just seems a bit much, is just my concern. So,
yeah, and part of the thing, not adding like a person to do it, instead of you're hitting multiple routes at once in a short period of time, so it doesn't make sense, and in an unpredictable event, so it doesn't make sense to have one person replacing. I'm not sure there's a good way. This is pretty typical on how things are done. I'm not sure there's another way to do it economically, more economically.
I'd like to move another number. I would like to move 6 million. I'm sorry it's late and I was not a math major in school. 6 million. 975,000, right? 6 million.
No.
Wait, what am I saying? Sorry.
No.
6. Sorry,
We'll take
6
it.
9 7 5 0 0 0.
No.
No, that's more? Oh, I'm sorry, so
6-0.
609. Sorry, I apologize.
Maybe you should
Sorry.
work it out on your paper and then come back when you have a number.
How about, oh, 6,075,007, okay.
I'll come back to you. Representative Stevenson?
Yeah, I just want,
6,075,000. 6,075,000.
Can you
Yeah.
have a number, write it down, and then say it coherently, and I will accept that motion if it's seconded. Thank you.
thank you, Madam Moderator. I flipped through the front stuff a few times. I didn't see anything. There seems to be a large increase in the software maintenance fees and all that. Is there, are we getting more software? What's going on over there?
We have 3 civil engineers that use AutoCAD. We also have a land surveyor that uses a no, it's not a sub-program, but it ties into AutoCAD, and those are the renewable licenses.
Okay.
So those are coming up and are rotating. Those are, since they're just for the department or department use, they're not in the IT department's budget anywhere. I tried that and they told me no.
Right. So do we have this might be I think this is a question for the town manager. Do we have a grand list of all of the software licenses and stuff and when they come up and for every department we have in the
I'm
city?
sure Brian has one, and he'll be up maybe later tonight if we get to it. But
Okay.
The IT director, he'd be the one that carries that.
And is this part of the plan to try to implement more interdepartment stuff?
This is more individual software for one department.
Right, I
Yeah.
know the CAD is
Yeah.
kind of specialized,
Yeah.
but I'm saying, is this something we're being looked at? And, you know, if we could, I know,
Please.
I know with the way companies like Microsoft, they're trying to move to more subscription-based
Right.
things, and so those prices are just gonna continue to go up. So I just think we should try to be ahead of the curve and try to, you know, see where we can save costs on that. Thank you.
Representative Mello Miller, did you want to finish your motion?
I apologize.
That's fine.
Okay, I would like to make a motion for 6,072,082. And that would cut 25% of that overtime out.
Do we have a second on that?
Second.
See if I write it down correct. That's what I heard. Is that correct?
Yes.
So we have a motion on the floor by Representative Mello Miller for $6,072,082, and it's been seconded by Representative Chase. Representative Streeter?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Just a point of clarification, I know to the taxpayers, it's either paying out of one pocket or the other pocket. But Gary Snyder, you indicated that at one time, the Board of Education contracted to have their snow removal done. Now, our Public Works Department is doing that. Does the Board of Education reimburse the Public Works Department?
For the schools that we do, yes. For the employees' time, whether it be straight time, overtime, and for the salt, for the materials, they reimburse us. We bill them at the end of the snow season, which is around April 15th, tax day. We bill the Board of Ed, and they cut us a check.
Does that show up in our financing
Yes.
plan?
20,000.
Yes.
So, and I apologize, so we offer $20,000 worth of service to them?
It's the actual time, correct. Hour for hour, ton of salt for ton of salt. We bill them, they reimburse us back, and if on page 117, snow and ice control services, it shows we're estimating about $20,000 coming back to the town.
But we don't, and I know you probably don't have the figures, but maybe on the top of your head because you've been around so long. Do you know how much that the Board of Education was paying for that contract? $20,000 seems very minimal for all the schools.
I only do 4 of the schools. The Board of Ed on some of the smaller schools do their own, and on the west side, I do believe the city of Groton performs that services for it. When we started out, when we had 12 schools, again, the West Greenleaf date and time, 4 were Board of Ed, 4 were us, town, Public Works, and the 4 were the city schools that the city highway did. Of course, we closed schools in the city. I do Fitch, Cutler, Klonaski, I'm forgetting one, and Fitch Middle, but that was closed too. So that's the estimate. They do have they use small trucks, pickup trucks for the smaller schools that they do themselves. I do believe the contract price way back when, it was like $120,000 to do all the schools way back when, and the service level was not acceptable.
So they got a heck of a deal from the Public Works Department.
Right, because there's no standby fee. It's our route or paving, there's no standby fee. If you're a state contractor, they'll pay you, I do believe, $7,500 just to be on call-in. If they call you once or call you nothing, you got $7,500 in your pocket.
Okay. Thank you, Gary.
Representative Stevenson?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. So you spoke earlier about what happens if we don't have the money set aside for various fixes. Can you please explain what happens if we make this cut to allocated overtime? Like, what's the impact of that?
There's 2 impacts. One is that either the service level goes down, and I'd have to talk to the town manager or what that service level means, down to something where it becomes dangerous, or, as I do in a bad year, I overexpend that account and ask for a supplemental appropriation.
Thank you.
Representative Bordelon?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I also agree. I think the overtime is quite, high. I know we have to estimate something. We don't know what the winter's going to be, but it just seems to me that if you did hire, not contract out, but hired part-time people to offset the cost for that short amount, it's only a short period of time for the winter, you might have some cost savings there drawing on overtime. Also, it would make sense to maybe fund a certain amount, but have some accountability for your overtime counts. I know in companies I've worked for, if you just have somebody that can, and I'm not saying you, but we'll allot $200,000 to that overtime account, let's burn it. Who needs overtime? And I'm not saying that's what you're particularly doing, but it's just a matter of, I feel like there should be an accountability on it. There should be some form of a freeze in the sense of when we're saying we're going to pull out of our general funds and have a 0 mill rate, but we're going to $117,000 in overtime, and other places also have overtime, not just this account necessarily. But it just seems that there'd be more, a little bit more checks and balance, like, let's do 50, and a director of that department then could come in with reasonable conditions and show, I don't know, I agree with Nancy Melomillion's number. I would even like to see that number 50% lower, to be quite honest. Thank you.
Sure. You go. Mr.
Sure.
Burke?
Again, we saw we spent $211,000 last year. This year was a very, very light year. It was $160,000. That, you're certainly not going to want to go below that. If you adopt that, then anything above it's just a risk. I'm not going to cut service back. We're going to do what we need to do to clear the roads. It doesn't make sense to hire individual part-time people to learn a route for one time a year and take on the big equipment. They're not going to do it near as well. We're going to expend whatever it is, and if we have a good year, then that $25,000, 25% cut's fine, and if not, then we come back for either contingency funds or fund balance. Transfer of contingency is completed or is used up. So that's really all there is to it on that.
Representative Whitehouse?
So a lot of people talk about the idea of hiring a part-time person, and in my business, I work with a lot of businesses that are trying to hire that are not able to for a variety of different jobs, and I suspect that there is some level of skill involved in driving the plow trucks and other equipment. In addition to knowing the town and the roads and whatnot, is also driving that massive machine. So I would imagine that the idea of hiring someone to be part-time, seasonal, with that skill set would be quite a challenge. I do see the rationale of saying we want to restrict the overtime and then to come back to the RTM. It's just the one thing that I hope we do not see is in January when Public Works comes back to us and says we need another $30,000, I can almost guarantee someone in the body will say, why didn't we allocate the right amount of money at the time? And Gary will have to say, well, we tried to, that's what we asked for, and it was reduced, and now we're back. Because I've now been here long enough to see that cycle multiple times of the budget, the right amount is put up, it's reduced, they come back, we then say, why didn't you plan ahead for this? They try to explain that they did plan ahead for it and it was cut, and I think that we're at the beginning of that cycle again.
Thank you.
And we're looking at $29,000 cut, which is not a huge amount of money in the grand scheme of things, but their current, as Mr. Bird pointed out, they're asking for $204,000, and in 2018, FYE 2018 is $211,000, which would be less. So that would already be a cut off 2 years ago when it actually snowed, because you may recall it, we forgot to have winter this year. So I personally would, or I'll be supporting the first number and not the second, because the larger number.
I want to remind you, this is the first account of a lot, so if someone has said something, please try to limit your comments to something new. Mr. Burt would like to respond.
Just a reminder
You can
that
leave the floor.
we don't do transfers mid-year, though. Gary will spend what he has to spend through the winter season and early rain season, freezing season, and then it'll be a fourth quarter transfer, so it won't be mid-year we're running into trouble.
Representative
We
Wells?
can keep you updated, of course, as it goes.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. It would seem that if they were to cut this overtime, that we would add a similar amount to the contingency, so it would be available when we needed it.
Thank you. Representative Casper?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I guess I would have to concur that I doubt that you could hire a qualified person part-time in the winter during a storm, I mean, to come in for storms, to cut overtime. I don't think that that's practical. And it's a guesstimate anyway, and cutting an estimate is doing nothing. I mean, it just isn't going to work, and it won't be cost-effective to hire another person. So I will support the first number.
Thank you. Any others? Are we ready to vote? All right, we have a motion on the floor for $6,072,082 for Public Works account 1035. All in favor, please raise your hand.
Eben, Pasqualini, Bordelon, keep your hands up, please. Mello Miller, McDermott, Katowski, Chase. Did I get
That's it.
everybody? Okay, thank
All
you.
opposed, please raise your hand. Any abstentions?
Okay, so
That motion
that
fails.
was 7 in favor,
7 in favor,
26 opposed, and 0 abstentions.
26 opposed, no abstentions.
We have 33 members here.
Yeah. Okay, the next number we have on the floor is $6,101,332. All in favor, please raise your hand.
32.
All opposed, please raise your hand.
I didn't get any.
Pasqualini, Bordelon, Chase, Katowski.
That's it? Mello Miller.
Any abstentions? Mello Miller had her hand up too. Any abstentions? I didn't see any. That motion passes.
22
Is it 28 in favor?
27, I'm trying to do 32 here.
Oh, there are only 32?
Yep, 30,
Okay.
32.
27 in favor, 5 opposed, 0 abstentions. Thank you.
The next account is account 2020, sewer operating funds, on page 120 of your budget book. Motion for $6,217,550 for account 2020 sewer operating funds was made by Representative Newsom, seconded by Representative Merritt. Representative Katowski questioned requested some things be considered. She noted that there was a planned increase of 3% in the sewer use fees for next year. She stated fees have gone up 41% in 4 years and suggests a smaller increase of 1.5% this year. She also stated she will be asking that all 10% salary increases be reduced to 5% raises. It was also noted that the Water Pollution Control Authority is appointed by the Town Council and that there are presently no elected officials on it. She also asked if there was an opportunity to reduce the salary increase. If there wasn't an opportunity to reduce the salary increase, would it come out of account 2020? Discussion ensued about whether the RTM has the power to reduce salaries. If the RTM wants to cut salaries, we can cut the overall number, but not a particular salary. The 10% increase is for the chief operator who carries a Class 4 state license that's required for that job. Class 4 license is a very difficult qualification to obtain. The state gives municipalities 365 days to fill that job when it becomes vacant. The last 2 times it took Groton about 350 days each. Montville has been looking to fill the position in their town and is trying to lure someone with that qualification from the surrounding towns. The increase is necessary to stay on par with what Montville is offering. It was also noted that the increase in sewer use fees was to start raising money for capital improvement expenditures that were anticipated for next year. Discussion began on CIPs 10A, 10B, and 10C, and the reason for that is if you look in your budget book, the combined total of those 3 CIPs are shown under operating expense 5460 on page 123. So if you look at page 123, down at the bottom, 5460, $338, $338,000. That was the total for CIPs 10A, 10B, and 10C. So what we're going to do is we're going to vote on those 3 CIPs first and then come back to 2020, the sewer operating fund. But during the committee meeting, we discussed those. Since we had a motion on the floor already for 2020, I just left it there, and we just talked about the other CIPs during that time. So CIP 10A, and we can go to that. That's on page 242. What we'll do is we'll take this CIP first after I finish. We'll finish talking about it. Page 242. Sewer line infrastructure repair. So the requested amount is for $100,000 to inspect and repair sections of the Northwest Interceptor, which is the large run of pipe connecting the Navy base to the treatment center. These sections are too large to inspect with the robotic equipment that the town owns, so a contractor will be hired to clean and inspect these pipes, and if repairs are needed, those will also be addressed. So a motion was made, well, actually, I'll just say, is there any discussion on what I just read? Then we'll go CIP 10A. Motion was made for $100,000 by Representative Newsom and seconded by Representative Stanford. Discussion of the CIP occurred under account 2020. Vote was taken for $100,000 for CIP 10A. The vote passed unanimously. If there's no discussion, I'd like to make a motion for $100,000 for CIP 10A, sewer line infrastructure repair.
Second. All right. You just skip it around?
Yes, we are. We're going to bounce all over the place.
Okay.
That's fine. We have to be flexible, I've been
Keeps
told.
everybody awake.
All right, we have a motion on the floor for CIP 10A sewer line infrastructure repair. It's been made by Representative Newsom and seconded by our traditional second man, Representative Bailey. Is there any discussion on this one? Seeing none? Oh, Representative Pasqualini.
Since it's inspection and possible repair, why aren't we taking the same method that Public Works uses? It should be part of the regular budget maintenance. It should come out of their regular balance. It's not replacing anything. It's not a new project. It's part of doing business.
Traditionally, I think to give more transparency and visibility to the WPCF budget, these types of line items have fallen into the CIPs for greater discussion, so that's why it's there. Whether it could be argued, based on the previous discussions, I guess it could, but at least traditionally and for our purposes, that's why it's in this budget.
And I think that it's good to have it in this budget. I would agree. Thank you. Any other? All right, we have a motion on the floor for $100,000 for CIP 10A sewer line infrastructure repair. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion passes unanimously, 32 in favor, none opposed.
Next account, CIP 10B, pump stations on page 243. $100,000 being requested. $50,000 will be used to upgrade aging mechanical and electrical equipment at the Mumford Cove Pump Station. The other $50,000 will be used to perform a resiliency study to determine what sewer infrastructure in town may need to be modified to protect against future storms and climate change. Motion was made for $100,000 by Representative Newsom, seconded by Representative Wells for CIP 10B. Vote was taken for $100,000. The vote passed unanimously. Any discussion on those minutes?
Do you have discussion on the minutes?
Oh, sorry.
None.
If not, then, Madam Moderator, I'd like to make a motion for $100,000 for CIP 10B pump stations.
Is there a second? Second. We have a motion on the floor for CIP 10B pump stations made by Representative Newsom, seconded by Representative Bailey, $100,000. Is there any discussion? Representative Stevenson?
Yeah, so I know typically we identify with arrows when we do planning and analysis stuff. Do we have any idea what might come out of this resiliency study and when we'll be spending that money?
So the resiliency study was a request from last year that came up during town council deliberations. Obviously, climate change, sea level rise, those issues associated post Sandy. We have a number of our pump stations that are in low-lying areas that were built late 70s, early 80s, used a different flood map configuration at that point in time, one of which was flooded out entirely during Superstorm Sandy. So what we're doing is we're basically hiring somebody to come in and do a risk analysis of the stations along the shorefront. And then for the ones that come back with problems, need to be elevated or need to be hardened in some way, shape, or form, that study's going to recommend those steps to take to make those changes to those stations.
And will this study enable us to get additional money from grants and stuff as well? Is that the plan?
So with grants, each year we do apply for grants for our projects. And I'm glad that came up now because the Clean Water Fund has diminished greatly over the years. Typically, the Connecticut Deep puts out a call each year for project requests. We submit 2 or 3 every year, along with most other communities. Right now, we have a couple projects on the list at around number 60, number 65, based on the criteria. And at least in the last couple of years, usually it's projects 1 and 2, 1 through 5 get funded. So I'm not expecting to get a lot of money just because of what I know is already in the till.
Right, as I understand it though, when you go out looking for these things, having these studies conducted improves your chances of getting money. So is that, I'm just trying to understand, do we have any idea what we're gonna get back, where we expect to be, when we expect to be spending that money? Like I said, you see a lot of arrows. I've even seen some question marks when we don't know what those costs will be in the future. Like I'm just trying to understand what the long-term projections are of this study.
I really couldn't tell you what those would be. I know at least one station that's definitely, I know right now, because it flooded previously, is going to have some issues associated with it. And what they suggest as a remedy, I couldn't really tell you, so I wouldn't want to speculate on what those might be.
All right, thanks.
Sorry.
So do you have a contractor lined up for this, a consultant?
No, but Stonington, the town of Stonington did a recent study. You may have seen that in the paper. So there are a couple of university-affiliated groups that are doing it. So that would be, we put out an RFP and RFQ, see what we get for responses.
So I would suggest, in addition to the clean water funding that you can get through the state, that the CIRCA, which is the Connecticut Institute for Resilience and Adaptation, which is located at Avery Point, actually has calls from municipalities, and that this would fall right in that purview of those municipal grants that they have. So there are other options for when you get into the realm of resilience and climate change, you can really move outside of your traditional grant opportunities.
Okay.
So
Thanks.
I would just keep that open. I usually send those to Mr. Burt when I get them. Representative Richards?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Regarding the funding, it looks in the budget book that the code is O for this, which is other funds, user fees, but you seem to be requesting it from the, I don't know, general funds or capital reserve fund. Is there something wrong with the way it's listed here?
So the O for these pages stand for other WPCF user fees. So these are the fees that are generated through the monthly payments by users of the sewer system.
Right, so is that supposed to be indicating that they are paying the 100,000?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Any other questions? Representative Pasqualini?
I'm sorry, but I represent users in Old Mystic, so I have a lot of questions. In here it talks about infrastructure inspections, design and engineering services. Is there any reason why we don't use Groton City's engineer, who in their water department designs all of their pumps, all of their stations? It seemed would be a lot less than paying a company to do it.
I'm not familiar with their staffing at the city, nor have they requested before. We've talked to Groton Utilities for some, some specific needs, but we haven't used theirs. We have our own engineers on staff, but a lot of this stuff's beyond their capabilities. I know that at least in many cases, our pump stations are more complex than what the city has. They have a lot of smaller pump stations that we have a lot of larger pump stations, so I really couldn't tell you what their specialties are, but we could look into it for sure.
All right, seeing no other hands, I think we're ready to vote on 100,000 for CIPB pump stations. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion passes 32 in favor, none opposed.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. The next account is CIP 10C, treatment facility, on page 244 of your budget book. $138,000 is requested for inspection, repair, and replacement of aging components of the treatment plant. Some of the discussion centered on critical components of the treatment plant, such as pumps and electrical controllers that could potentially be submerged in the event of a flood. A question was raised regarding nitrogen credits and the changes implemented after last year's budget. Commissioner Lund said that they were successful in implementing the changes and are now ahead with respect to nitrogen credits. A motion was made for, oh, I'm sorry, no. A motion was made for $138,000 by Representative Newsom, seconded by Representative Massett. Vote was taken on count CIP 10C for $138,000. The motion carried unanimously. Are there any questions about the minutes for CIP 10C? Madam Moderator, I'd like to make a motion for $138,000 for CIP 10C treatment facility.
Is there a second? We have a motion on the floor for CIP 10C treatment facility for $138,000. It was made by Representative Newsom and seconded by Representative Bailey. Is there any questions about this? So, Representative Newsom?
Thank you. So are you going to do the same thing with the treatment facility that you essentially were going to contract out to do with the pump stations with regards to looking at equipment at the facility that could potentially be submerged, and what are you going to do? You're going to have to move that to a different floor, or how would that work? Because we talked about that there were possibly some pumps and controllers in the basement.
So that project is already underway to get the electrical distribution out of the lower levels for flood protection. So that's the project that was bonded for and is underway right now.
Okay.
So the work included here is the exterior and the external contractor we would probably bring in for inspection would be somebody to do some of the non-destructive testing methods that our staff aren't familiar with, ultrasound or magnetic flux and those types of technology. So not expecting a lot of that 138 to be sourced out for consultants. I'm hoping the vast majority of it 125 is actually for parts and whatnot. And hopefully, a vast majority of that can be done by our own staff. There are a couple larger valves that we'd have to have a rigger come in to do, but most of that's really just for the parts and materials.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none, I think we're ready to vote on CIP 10C, treatment facility, $138,000. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion passes, 32 in favor, none opposed. Representative Pitowski?
Point of clarification, are we still at the portion of Chairman Newsom's minutes where we're still talking about the minutes, or did we pass that?
No, so now we're going to jump back to account 2020, now that we've gone through CIPs 10A, 10B, and 10C, which made up that last line in account 2020.
Okay.
And voted on all those. We're now back to account 2020.
Okay, did we already approve the minutes?
No, we did not.
No.
I have an amendment.
Okay.
I believe what I stated when I was at the committee, that the user fees went up 41% in 12 years, not 4 years.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
Are there any other questions on the minutes for account 2020 sewer operating funds? Seeing none, Madam Moderator, I'd like to make a motion for $6,217,550 for account 2020 sewer operating funds.
I just slow on the uptake there.
Gotta stay on your toes.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor for account 2020, sewer operating fund for $6,217,550, made by Representative Newsom, and I gotta be honest, I didn't quite hear who seconded it. Ah, Representative Adams, excellent, thank you. Is there any discussion? Representative Katowski?
Thank you. I have learned so much about this account this year. With the help of Director Lund and his helpfulness and patience, I just want to bring a few things to your attention. In this account, the sewer users pay for everything unless it goes to referendum. So this account is up by 8.8% if you look on page 120. Okay? So then if you look back to page 122, there is an omission in the financing plan. The actual financing plan sewer fee numbers were omitted because, I have an explanation for that, because the Director of Public Works had proposed no increase to the sewer use fee in his budget, and this is why the revenue is flat in the budget. But when the WPCA met in February, they proposed an increase to increase the fund balance for capital improvement projects in the future. So any increase this year in the fees is going towards future capital improvement projects. So that number should be $6,668,099. Okay. So the revenues in the financing plan, okay, even without the current proposed increase of 3%, are $6,500,000. But their expenses, if you look on page 123, are about $200,000. So all that extra money is going to automatically go to fund balance for capital improvement projects. So they're already being able to save money towards capital improvement projects. So, like I said before, in the past 12 years, sewer fees have gone from $24 to $34, which is a 41% increase. There were, however, 5 years when it was flat during the economic crash. So I was trying to figure out a way for the sewer users to have less of an increase. Instead of 3%, maybe 1.5. But that is determined by the WPCA commission of 5 people. And the RTM can't do it, the town council can't do it. So what I would like to do is encourage the RTM representatives who have WPCA customers in their district, anybody that doesn't have a septic system, or Groton Utilities is paying sewer fees to WPCF. And I would like to encourage them, if they agree that maybe they don't need a 3% increase this year, maybe they just need half of that, because they don't need it to run the facility, they have that plus, and to put towards capital improvement projects, which I think we should do, but maybe less. One more thing I wanted to show you. On page 125 is their fund balance. So if you look at their fund balance, they have plenty of fund balance. So I would just like to encourage the RTM members to go to the WPCA meeting with me in June to try to encourage the WPCA members to not give the users a 3% fee increase, and maybe just give a 1.5% fee increase. Is that right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? I would just add that even people who have septic systems pay into that sewer fee. Oh, my husband does. We have a house. What? No, we have one up in the military area, and it definitely does pay a fee. That's all right. Seeing no more comments, we're going to vote on this number, $6,217,550, and this is account 2020 sewer operating fund revenues. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion carries, 31 in favor, none opposed. Thank you. Yes, please.
Just to point out, if you look at the CIP plan, there's over $9 million in projects already planned out of these funds. So what they're trying to avoid is raising it drastically in a couple of years and have to collect it all at once. So, trying to smooth it out so people don't, get hit as hard.
I believe that was 30 in favor.
Yeah,
Sorry,
right.
we had one member leave the room. I just want to correct that.
Momentarily, missed the vote.
And
The next account is account 2030, solid waste, on page 126 in your budget book. Motion was made for $1,736,585 by Representative Massett, seconded by Representative Stanford. Director Schneider provided a detailed history regarding solid waste disposal in Groton at the Preston incinerator. He also noted that the cost of recycling will be going up in the future. The $42,102 increase is the result of the Connecticut Comprehensive Materials Management Strategy, or CMMS. Department of Environmental Protection has a goal to reduce municipal solid waste down 10% from the 2014 levels by 2024. This will require rewriting Groton's solid waste ordinance. This will affect all commercial, government, and residential waste in the town. The $42,102 is for additional attorney hours to wade through the state requirements, or lack thereof, to determine how much authority Groton has in this process and lay out the ground rules for how the town will interact with everyone involved. A vote was made for $1,736,585 for account 2030, solid waste. The vote passed unanimously. Are there any questions on those minutes? Seeing none, Madam Moderator, I'd like to make a motion for $1,736,585 for account 2030, solid waste.
all right, Great, we have a motion on the floor for account 2030, solid waste, $1,736,585. It's been made by Representative Newsom, seconded by Representative Adams. Any discussion on this? Representative Rogers?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I'm very happy to see that there are funds going to recycling, commercial recycling outreach and enforcement. That the last ordinance, though, is 21 years old. And I'm wondering if you can tell me more about that program, and am I correct in inferring that we do have about $45,000 going to the recycling program?
What the $42,000 is asking for is really for staff to go through several things. You're right, our last ordinance was 21 years ago, and it was just a very general ordinance. Had to do with commercial waste, when we actually ran the commercial waste system. But it also had a segment in there that the town council could authorize by a vote curbside residential collection. They did not go with that method of collection. Well, just briefly, what we have in Groton, what we'll be looking at is our ordinances. The state would like us to update them, or is requiring us to update them. And being 21 years old, we have a very general recycling ordinance that could be strengthened. Some of the issues are is that we are Groton. We have the subbase. The state of Connecticut feels that I have the right, or Groton has the right, to tell the subbase how to recycle. That's federal powers. That's federal land. We're about the only community, I do believe, in the state that has something like that. Also, there are several of our subdivisions that were given powers to provide municipal services, which include garbage collection by the state to the subdivision. So can that town of Groton, put it bluntly, order the city of Groton to recycle more? Not that it's good or bad. So these are some of the issues that we need to work through, and then get back to the state, and then how do we write our ordinances here. So we're working with it. The DEEPS plan, the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, has a plan out there. They wanted to reduce 60% diversion of solid waste from landfills and disposal. That's bulky waste, and that's garbage and those items there. You do that by recycling more. You do that by using less packaging and stuff. And then there's other programs like mattresses, paint. You bring it back for recycling. So for us to look at that plan, we need to look at our ordinances and then what we can do. We're a member of SCARA, the Southeastern Connecticut Regional Resources Recovery Authority, 11-member towns, that is heavy not only into the garbage disposal, but are looking into having more of a region-wide recycling. We're working at looking at getting the information out to people on what to recycle and what not to recycle, how to recycle, what to use, composting bins. So if you go to the SCARA's webpage, which is scara.org, has a lot of good information on there on what can and can't go into the bins in general. What we're going to see here in the state of Connecticut, and it's all over the U.S., it's going to cost money to recycle. No longer is it going to be free, or we're going to make $1 or $2. I do believe it could be Bristol has gotten a number of $80 a ton to recycle the recyclables. We are burning our garbage at $58 a ton. What we will be doing here in the region here, we have existing contracts with Willimantic Waste that has them paying a base number to us, but SCARA has put in their budget funds to pay for recycling for the first year if those numbers go the opposite direction, and they will. It's just a natural way that it's happening. The green wall, China's not taking our garbage or our recyclables. There's too much of other material in them. There's not many plants around this area that do take the recyclables into another product, so there's a transportation cost. So this will start the process. One's having good ordinances, then public education, and then moving through the whole system, watching what the state is doing, and then dovetailing our programs into it. If you use less, recycle more, it does help. But this is a process. There's going to be a change right now. It's going to cost money to recycle. That doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. It is cheaper to recycle currently right now than it is to burn than to burn it. And of course, there are some state ordinances that there's certain items that can't be used. Glass is one of the difficult items. We all recycle it. It goes out of state to a landfill. There's no use of it in this area, but you don't want it in your garbage, it doesn't burn. So, so we have certain items that the state is looking in to try to get other industries to come in for reuse. One of the use for glasses, I know I'm going on too long, one more statement, the use for glass may be in the preparation of new roads into road beds, but the state DOT doesn't like that material in because it doesn't meet their standards, but other states use it. So there's a whole big issue. We're into newer things for recycling. Product, again, mattresses recycling, we're into that, paint recycling, of course, and electronics. So that was a long story.
Thank you. It's
Period.
useful. I think it's something we probably should discuss at some time in the future.
Absolutely.
In more detail. Any other questions? Representative Rogers, did you want to?
Just to say that I would love to see Groton lead the charge for the state on composting.
I've been here since '83 and '78. We're a leader in the recycling. That big green building on Flanders Road, that was the first one in the Northeast to be a MRF to recycle products on that. We tried composting. We didn't get any takers. Sewer sludge composting in '85. I was in charge of that, and no one wanted to do it here. And so we have other issues on food organics. We tried that. We were taking them to Rhode Island. The stuff because there's no place in the state of Connecticut. And within reason. But absolutely, we should.
Representative Stevenson?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I just want to say all that information was very helpful. You seem to know a lot about the subject, and I appreciate that. I just wanted to ask, so this seems to be like the fees for the attorneys and to look into all this. Could we make this a CIP? Could we track this a little better than just putting it into a line item in the budget? It just seems to be a long-term project, kind of similar to when we look at analyzing flooding or roads. We're doing some kind of analysis before we follow up, and it seems to be one of those things. So I'm just wondering why we're not making this one of those long-term projects.
Because it's really not, we're not going to build anything with it, with the information with the attorney. Second thing, the recycling is long-term, but the ordinances and putting the program together needs to be done by December or January of next year. So if the money is approved, we need to get on this right away to meet the expectations of the DEP. I'm supposed to report to them July 1st the progress of what we're doing, and they'll give us, there is some leeway, but this will be done within the next 6 to 8 months, putting the ordinances together, what we can and can't do, and then putting the information out. After that, if we were going to build something, it'd be like a capital project, or if we were going to do something like that. But this is the town attorney's fees. This is staff time. This is notices, public notices.
Right. So we can't. I'm new to the RTM, so we can't use the CIPs for tracking these kind of more amorphous concepts, or specifically for building and all that.
But no, that's not one of the definitions.
Thank you,
Mr. Burt. Sorry, I couldn't quite understand.
I'm sorry. I was just telling her that I just got a message that the school vote did get approved today.
Oh, okay, great.
1,099 to 259.
Congratulations.
So.
We can move forward with.
1,099 yes to 259 no.
Oh. Can I just ask about the recycling? I just want to follow up on some of the things like e-cycling. E-cycling and where CFLs and batteries go. Do you collect those at the dump? I know I went on the tour.
Yes. So bring them to the transfer station. And what's really interesting, for all the items up there, tires and that SCARA, the regional authority, pays for the disposal of the tires. Pays for all the appliances that have the old Freon, the CFLs in it. They have a contractor that comes through, takes all of it out, then scrap metal. The e-waste that's given up at any transfer station, you bring it there. There's a contractor that comes in from the state and takes up that. So we have that. We also have mattresses at the transfer station. It used to cost $20 to get rid of them because we didn't want them, and neither did any of the bulky waste disposal places want them. But I bring them. We're into the mattress recycling program, And so you bring them there, and there's a part of your sale of a mattress goes to recycle them. These are not reconditioned mattresses. These are recycled. So they take the bedding, they take the springs, they take the wood, they use it. It's not, that's recycled. A reconditioned mattress is something that somebody else slept on for the longest time, and maybe have put a new cover on it. They're supposed to steam them, but we don't. But all of that stuff is done at the transfer station. So please bring them down, and if you have any questions, give us a call or go to Scaro's webpage.
Thank you. Are we ready to vote? We have a number on the floor, $1,736,585 for account 2030 solid waste. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion carries. Is it 29? 30? 30 in favor, none opposed. Thank you.
So, next line item at this time was adjournment. Time ran out before all accounts could be completed. A motion to recess until the May 2nd, 2019 Public Works Committee meeting was made by Representative Massett, seconded by Representative Merritt. The motion to recess was approved unanimously. The meeting recessed at 9 p.m. Respectfully submitted, Scott Newsom, Chairman, RTM Public Works Committee. Madam Moderator, I make a motion to approve the April 25th, 2019 RTM Public Works Committee meeting minutes.
Second. So we have a motion to approve the minutes of the April 29th, did you say? 25th RTM Public Works Committee meeting by Representative Newsom and I think Representative Adams, was it? No, Representative Irma Streeter seconded it. Thank you. You guys are you're not as good as Bailey.
I didn't hear that. I didn't want to
I'm sorry, the meeting minutes.
Who was that, Streeter?
No, it was Irma Streeter, yes. That's the one I heard, but I heard someone in the back. But
If I could just say the meeting minutes as amended for Representative Katowski.
thank you. So we have amended minutes, and they're on the floor. Is there any other amendments or changes? No? Seeing none, all in favor of approving those minutes, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Those minutes are approved by unanimously.
Madam Moderator, before we go on to the May 2nd meeting, can I request a 5-minute recess?
Please do. Yes, you may. You have it. 5-minute recess.
5 minutes.
Please get back at, like 3 minutes after 9 if you can.
Okay, the next set of meeting minutes was from the May 2nd, 2009 meeting, Groton Senior Center, Classroom B. The meeting was called to order at 6:05 p.m. Committee members present were Representatives Newsom, Wells, Merritt, and Massett, and Stanford. Representative Stanford arrived around 6:25. Also present were Town of Groton Public Works Director Gary Schneider, Public Works Supervisor Stacy Oman Leach, and Kevin Trejo. Account 6040, Fleet Fund, on page 130 for your budget book. Motion was made for $871,460 for account 6040 by Representative Newsom, seconded by Representative Massett. Discussion. This account is down almost 13% from last year. Fleet vehicles to be purchased this year are shown on page 134. Those are the ones that are down at the bottom below the solid line. Representative Newsom asked what the difference was between an interceptor and a detective vehicle, and the thought that maybe we could recycle some of the detective vehicles, or some of the interceptor vehicles as detective vehicles. However, the director said that some of the equipment, such as the cages, are different between vehicles, and unlike the interceptors, the detective vehicles are unmarked. It was asked why all the vehicles to be purchased are police vehicles, which you'll notice that they are at the bottom of page 134. Director Schneider said that public safety is the priority, and that next year some public works vehicles will need replacement. The vote was taken for $871,416 for account 6040, Fleet Fund. Motion passed unanimously, 4-0. Representative Stanford had not yet arrived. Is there any discussion on those minutes? Madam Moderator, I'd like to make a motion for $871,416 for account 6040, Fleet.
All right. right, we have a motion on the floor for fleet, the fleet account, 6040, $871,416, made by Representative Newsom, seconded by Representative Bailey. Is there any questions? Representative Newsom?
Director, are we still buying fuel with the consortium? A bulk buy?
Yes, that's on through the purchasing department. She goes out and seeks bids and for diesel, gas, and also heating oil. So the answer is yes. And there's a set price for so many gallons, and above that, then it floats in the market.
And are we selling off any of our old vehicles this year?
Okay, the fiscal year that we're in now, there were 6 vehicles that was authorized. 2 of the patrol vehicles, they have come in, and we traded into the selling dealer those vehicles. So those vehicles were part of the sale. The next one was a senior van, which we're getting the senior center director, Parks and Rec, got an 80% state federal grant for that. We're waiting for the vehicle to arrive, and when that is, then one of the buses will be auctioned off when the vehicle arrives. Purchasing agent puts them on the webpage, and we seek bids on that. We have a pickup truck that was authorized last year. We are waiting for it to be delivered. Purchasing a 2020 Chevy K1500. We're waiting on the VIN number because it's still being manufactured. Once that comes into the fleet, then we again auction that vehicle out on the webpage. We have a 5 cubic yard plow truck that we did receive, but it's going back and forth with the vendor because some of the controls are not functioning properly. It's under warranty, so we kept the old vehicle. So right now, since we're after the snow season, that'll be auctioned off. The new one is there. And then there's a pickup truck pickup truck body only. We are purchasing that. So bottom line, we either traded 2 in with the dealers. The other 2 will be auctioned. 3 will be auctioned off on the webpage.
Thank you.
Representative Katowski?
Thank you. I have 2 questions. On page 134, there's a list of vehicles. Now, of course, I understand why there's police, public works, parks and rec, but the question I have is why does dispatch, planning, IT, human services, library, engineering all have their own designated vehicles? Why isn't there a pool?
I was going to give that to the manager to answer, but I'll answer that, and he will definitely correct me. Back in 2005, we had a fleet study done way back when. The manager has asked me to update that study. Back then, we had 268 vehicles in the fleet. We are down about 20% already through attrition. For engineering, we have one of the vehicles is a survey van. It carries the survey equipment. Nice gentleman. He's lived here forever. He's surveyed forever. So he's kind of a forever person. So our inspector has one, building inspection, which is part of planning. They have inspectors that go use town vehicles. But bottom line, what the manager has tasked me with, and I'm putting it on a schedule that this August, by early September, I will have done an analysis on all of our vehicles that we have, the mileage and usage, and with some recommendations to reduce the fleet. There are some vehicles out there hanging around that either we could, mileage reimbursement is one thing, maybe some reasons why not, or there's some underused pieces of equipment that with a little bit of some analysis, we could go out and lease that piece of equipment versus having it in the fleet. So the manager has tasked me to do that. That's why this year we looked at the primary vehicles, which are the police vehicles. Those are public safety. Those are the ones that are going first. So, yes, we will be looking at those departments that have those vehicles, their usage, and the department head's going to have to justify the continued use of that vehicle.
And they don't take them home, right?
No.
Okay. And my second question is, on all the lines where it says parks and grounds, are any of those vehicles for the golf course?
No. Last year we moved, not only in wastewater, but we moved all the golf course vehicles into the golf course fund. So those vehicles there, once you reach those functions, you'll see some money there probably for the replacement of those vehicles.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? All right, seeing none, I think we're ready to vote on fleet account 6040, $871,000, 416. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Are we at 30?
31.
30?
31.
31? 31 in favor, none opposed. Do you know Gustafson left? Okay. All righty.
All right, now we're on to CIPs. First, the CIP 1A Townwide Pavement Management Program on page 216, your budget book. Motion for $85,000 was made for CIP 1A by Representative Newsom, seconded by Representative Massett. Discussion. Director Schneider stated that this would fund an outside firm to come in, investigate, and inspect all town roads and put together an estimate of what should be done over the next 5 years. That evaluation will be provided to the town council. An objective third party would do the analysis. Last time that this was done was 2008. This effort does not include state roads, nor does the review take into account daily or seasonal usage, just the present condition of the roads at the time of the inspection. The vote was taken for $85,000 for CIP 1A. The motion carried unanimously 4-0 to 0. Is there any discussion on those minutes? Madam Moderator, I'd like to make a motion for $85,000 for CIP 1A.
Second.
All right. So we have a motion on the floor for CIP 1A. This is the Townwide Pavement Management Program, $85,000, made by Representative Newsom, seconded by Representative Bailey. Are there any questions on this? Did you, Representative Newsom, did you say that this is for a pavement management study? Is that what it is for? It's not for the pavement, it's for a study on
It's for, so you know how we've had in the past, we've bonded 5-year bonds for
Just once.
for pavement. So what this study would do was, this is to look forward in over the next 5 years, do this study, evaluate all the roads in town so that everybody can make a determination on what the priorities are for repaving.
Okay. Representative McDermott?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Gary, what did we do last time when we bonded for this particular thing? Did we have a study like this?
Yes, there's actually 3 studies done, one for each political subdivision, Groton, Long Point, City of Groton, and the Town of Groton. Town of Groton did it first, and then there was direction from the Town Council to perform the other 2 studies. And so what it did was take a look at all the roads, other than the state roads within the town.
I would think that we would have enough expertise to do that partially on our own at least. Why would that be necessary to have, quote, experts, unquote, give us information that we have within our own purview?
Well, what the study does is take a look at the condition of the asphalt itself, not as the chairman said, not on the traffic volumes on it or anything else. It is a non-partial third-party review. The Army does it, the military, the Navy does it for all their road networks. Large cities do it because it is an objective study. Second, we don't have staff that's trained to do those observations. Some of it is done electronically by the types of asphalt you have and the reflectability of what asphalt is left and the rock that's in it or the stone. But a lot of it is really training with the eye of what type of cracking there is and assigning a number to it. So we don't do that for a living. So it'd be a whole learning thing.
Okay, good, thank you.
Representative Adams?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Representative Bailey did not second that motion. I did.
Okay. Please let the record reflect that Representative Adams seconded that. Sorry, I heard that voice I was familiar with, but I got it wrong. Was there like a time, is someone timing these things like the Kentucky Derby?
I think you're familiar with Representative Adams.
All right. Anything, Representative Chase?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Did you say that this study includes the city roads?
Yes, it does. City roads, Groton Long Point roads, and the town roads, but it does not include Navy housing, Navy roads, or state roads.
So if the city just paved, since 2013, 27 miles of their 28 miles, why are we studying their roads?
I don't know. I don't know what the city, I believe the city hasn't done 27 miles of the road.
I have a report that says they do. They did.
If it was, the report would show that those roads are 100% and that the next pot of money would not, probably not include any city roads.
So, but this 85,000 includes.
Would take a look at all of the roads. I mean, because even the town of Groton, we have resurfaced roads here too. It will go over those roads to take a look at them, but it's just for a rating pattern. It'll show that they were just resurfaced. The condition of the asphalt's good, so they'll probably get a score of 100 or close to 100. And then, you, of course, you don't do anything to those roads.
All right, thank you.
Representative Miller.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I'm sorry, can you just explain to me, historical data for the town shows a reduction of pavement area by 1% results in future savings. So you're saying by doing this study, we'll save on the roads later on? Is that what I'm reading correctly?
There's two things, that statement, and it's probably, I'm just reading it right now. It refers to two things. One is, I take from the study the roads that they recommend that we should resurface, and then what I look at is, can I reduce the pavement width? Can I, if it's 32 feet wide, can we do 30 feet wide? Can we do 28 feet wide? Over the last, I think, 10 or 12 years, I have reduced pavement in the town of Groton, just the town, over 4.5 acres less was paved, just by taking those little cuts off the sides of the road. Partly it's that. Also, shows a reduction in pavement area. That refers to that. I don't know what, put it bluntly, I don't know why that statement was in there. So future savings would be the reduction in width, not the types of roads we resurface. So that statement there is was a leftover from.
So is this a potential cost savings? That's what I'm.
And the cost savings on any pavement study, what it does is it does several things. It will take a look at a road. If the road is so bad, if the road is so bad, don't put any repair money into it. Patch the pothole. It's just like a roof. If you know the roof is 25, 30 years old, putting another course of shingles on top of it is just going to be money thrown away. Throw a blue tarp on it and try to get a home equity loan is what it's saying. So this will prioritize the road. So what it does is save money instead of going after that. Well, that road is really bad. You should resurface it. It's probably that road is really bad. You need to reconstruct it. The town of Groton, we have one road, which is Main Street Noang. That there's a separate CIP project that hasn't been funded for several years, but that's a reconstruction. To do anything, to put pavement over the top of it is throwing the third course of shingles on a roof that's ready to fail. It will be there for a couple of years, look nice, and then we'll get the same stuff. So that's it. That statement in there should be removed, and I'll make a note of that.
Thank you for that clarification. It makes it a lot more understanding why we need the CIP, so I appreciate it.
Representative Bordelon.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I do think we do a lot of studies in this town. They seem to be kind of cost. I see where they possibly can save money, but sometimes it's a little bit bothersome to see how many studies we do to study, and some of the studies end up going nowhere. Hopefully this one will. Looking at some of the Mystic roads where the gas piping was laid, is that going to be part of this? I'm assuming that's part of the study, or is there already a plan for those roads?
Okay, there's
those are a wreck right now, I know from all the digging. So.
Okay, there's two things in the Mystic area. One is that we are working with Eversource, which is putting the gas mains in. So the areas around Irving Street, Wynwood Lane, Lapstrake Court, we have hold off resurfacing there until they get their water main and their gas mains in. They'll temporarily patch for a year, let the trenches settle, and then we come back and resurface the road. There are other sections where they laid lines in Bel Air and some of the other roads, West Mystic Avenue, where they've laid the lines and they have the right to do that, and there will be permanent patches there. There is a third set of roads which they will permanent patch this year. What we want to try to, so what the study will do is we'll take a look at those roads. Those roads will be downgraded in points because there is a utility cut in it. and it'll take a look at that. So what I'm happy to report is that we're staying ahead of, we're working with Eversource with their water main installations, with the water main, which is really Aquarian. Eversource is Aquarian, Aquarian's Eversource. But we're working with the utilities now together so that we can keep those permanent scars on those roads. So they will be rated. They'll be rated a little bit less, programmed in, but we're working with the utilities now, the state, to follow them instead of being ahead of them. So the work that's going in Gravel Street, Pearl Street, and everything else, they will put the water mains in. They will then permanently patch those. They could involve the width of the trench plus about a foot more on either side, so there'll be a permanent patch that will be done professionally, but it'll still be that scar in the road.
So like Window Way is going to be a permanent patch as well, or?
Wynwood, I do believe Wynwood, Lap Straight, and all of that, those areas there, and that subdivision, will, along with Irving Street, they'll install a gas main in, try to make as many lateral connections to the houses as possible. It will sit 1 year, then next year, not this summer, this construction season, next construction season, you'll see us in there recycling the whole road, resurfacing it, and that'll be done then down there.
Representative McDermott, Newsom, sorry.
Very quickly, Mr. Director, so we talked about the fact that this study would just show the condition of the roads as they are at that moment, but then you have to prioritize them. You have to consider how much traffic is going to be on that road on a given day, or if it's a seasonal type road that maybe doesn't get a lot of use. So who's going to weigh those factors to determine the priority of the roads? As with the first study, it was the Public Works Director and the Mayor of the city. It was myself and the Town Manager for us, and it was Groton Long Point, their Public Works Director. And we all take a look at it. There's many places that we can get traffic counts on roads. The state does perform that at the intersection of their roads and a local road, so we have that. Second, we use the planning departments. Is there a major developer going to come in, or development going to come in? You don't want to do all the work on the road that's going to be tore back up again. So we use those factors. It's the boots on the ground knowledge that you have. If a road comes in at a low rating and it's only 2 houses on it, you're going to patch it. If you have money, you're going to replace it. If it's a small cul-de-sac, and the same thing. So what you do is you do use your local knowledge. But it's worked well during the first study that we had with the city of Groton. We had the reports, made a prioritization of the roads, and that was reported back to the town council that these were the series of roads that were going to be used if the bond was approved, and of course the bond money was approved for city of Groton, town of Groton, and Groton Long Point. Thank you very much.
Representative McDermott.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Gary, do we have any kind of a standard to which we hold Eversource to when they patch these roads? Those roads are terrible over there in Mystic.
Absolutely, because most of those roads are temporary patches. The West Mystic Avenue would probably be a prime example of what a road should look like when it's patched. It's resurfaced properly. The joint is sealed. Now the other roads were let go for a year. We usually like the trenches to settle for a year, because even though they compact them and that, Mother Nature does it better, so there'll be some settlement of the roads, then they'll be coming back. So their plan is to come back this construction season. The asphalt plant just opened, I do believe, this week in Groton, so we're starting into the construction season, so they'll be coming back. So Judson Avenue is one that they have to come back and patch, all those areas.
Those patches were terrible within a week after they finished them. I mean, you're not waiting a year. I understand that, what the deal is, but it's just that I'm curious to know if anybody from the town has the ability or the authority to go out there and hold them to some kind of a standard.
The Public Works Department has. We did when there were settlements out there. We got them back out there in the middle of the year. RH Wright was their contractor. They have a hot box that they used to make the patches, but it was a temporary patch. Like Irving Street is a road that's going to be resurfaced. Their patch is better than our road. It's that bad. But there are places down there that there was some settlements, and we were out there with them. We were patching them. Judson Avenue would be one, as the patch will be just as good as the one on Mystic Avenue, West Mystic Avenue. So there was a period of time where it was settling, and we were out there watching them, and they have responded. I think they've responded very good. It doesn't look perfect, but West Mystic is the standard.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Perry?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Has Paquonic Bridge been included in this study?
Absolutely. Those roads, when we redid the laterals, I do believe about 6 or 7 years ago, all the roads were resurfaced, but they were overlaid. It was part of our project, and the $6 million. What they will be doing, they will all be inspected. They'll be part of the whole study.
Has anybody been out there? I mean, we just got the new sidewalks that are going.
Correct.
There's potholes through the entire area.
If I know there's potholes on Industrial Drive, but I will send my crews out to look again, because the crew that was doing the sidewalk patches the road too. So if you know those areas, contact the department.
I've been a taxpayer out there for over 50 years, and those roads are, the roads are horrible, absolutely horrible.
They're a town road to be part of the study.
Seeing no more questions, we have a number, 85,000 on the table for CIP 1A, Townwide Pavement Management Program. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion carries unanimously, 31 in favor.
Next count is CIP 1G, road underpasses on page 217. Motion was made for $85,000 for CIP 1G by Representative Newsom, seconded by Representative Massett. Discussion. This CIP provides funding for planning and engineering for lowering the road beneath the train bridge on Paquonic Road. This is the bridge that's adjacent to CVS, kind of between CVS and the Dunkin' Donuts right there on the corner on Paquonic Road, by 2 feet to accommodate truck traffic. The site has experienced numerous instances of trucks making contact with the underside of the bridge. This work will update a 2006 study which will allow Groton to submit an application to the Southeastern Connecticut Council of Governments for lot SIP funds. The state would pay for 100% of the construction costs. A vote was taken for $30,000 for CIP 1G. The motion carried unanimously 4-0 to 0. Is there any discussion on these meeting minutes? Seeing none, Madam Moderator, I'd like to make a motion for $85,000 for CIP 1G road underpasses.
Second. We have a motion on the floor for CIP 1G, $30,000 for road underpasses, made by Representative Newsom. And who was the second? I didn't quite get it. Representative Bordelon seconded it. Thank you. Representative Chase?
Point of clarification, you just said 85,000.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. 30,000.
Okay. I thought I was losing
my apologies.
Sorry. I jumped the gun and just read what was down there.
Sitting there.
Yeah.
It's what I said, so $30,000.
Okay.
Second.
All right, we're all good on that. Representative Stevenson?
Yes, I was just looking for some, thank you, Madam Moderator. I was just looking for some clarification. I find this write-up to be a little confusing. So I understand we're looking at two overpasses here, one on Paquonic Road and one on South Road. I'd like to draw attention to the paragraph that says, as South Road is a state road and clearance and flooding should be addressed by the state, the focus of the project will be on the Paquonic Road underpass. Requested for FYE 20 are funds, $30,000, to update the 2006 study of this underpass. With this updated study, application will be made for the LOTCIP funds through the SCCOG. Which underpass is that referring to? Because as I understand it, if it's the state road, it's the funding, but the last referred to was the Paquonic Road. So.
It is only for the Paquonic Road, which is a town road. There's a reference in it to the old 2006 study. I wrote this, so I referenced back then the town manager wanted us to look at all three of the underpasses. We gave the information to the state to kind of push them along to do something, and we're 2020 and not much has been done. So it is just for the Paquonic Road underpass, our road.
So we can get funding for it then? Is that what you're saying?
Correct. What this will do is the COG needs updated estimates for the construction to be put into the queue for state funds. These state funds are really federal funds that are given to each state for transportation. So to get into the queue, they like to have a concept that it's more than just a concept. There has to be some hard facts behind it. So this would update the cost estimates, the condition of the road, but the cost estimates that we do have, so that we can, through the town council, make a submission to our regional council of governments for lot SEP funds. So we need to have the study updated to get in the queue. Whether the funds will be available this year or next year or the year after, there are funds that are recurring. It gets us into the queue. And then the COG does vote on all the projects then on it. This would lower the road. Right now we have less than 14 feet on that overpass. It's more like 12 feet. And it kind of cuts, Amtrak kind of cuts the road, kind of cuts the town in half of getting from one side to the other with trucks. Clarence B. Sharp is the only other way to get those big vehicles down there.
So if we do the study and we don't get the funding, are we going to have to pay for it then? Is that the...
Absolutely. It's our money up front. The second year funding, which we've estimated $165,000 for the final design and permitting, that is an estimate that'll be based on the current study, and if we get the funding, if we are in the queue for getting the grant. So right now, for us to make a submittal, we have to put some money up front for the study.
Right.
To me, it's critical. There's times that I hear on the scanner that trucks get stuck underneath. Trucks need to back up, so a police officer or two have to come there and stop traffic on Route 1 as a truck backs up. That's the best case. The ones that peel back the roofs of the truck and get stuck underneath are the worst ones. But it is access to some of our heavy industries. Wyman Gordon, PCC and Wyman Gordon are just right on the other side of the tracks. It is a shortcut to the airport. And yes, people say that there's GPS out there. The drivers use GPS. And their GPS shows them to take, that route to the airport, and it doesn't work. And are the drivers watching the signs? There's signs all over the place. I know they hit it, but it does cut the road. It does cut the time.
I would just think I don't know what the process is to revise one of these pages is, but I know you mentioned earlier for that erroneous line for about the 1%. If we could maybe take a look at some of the wording in the section and maybe clarify where funding comes from and where it's going towards, because as it is right now, you talk about getting some funding for the Pequannock Pass, but then the next line talking about the $165,000, it doesn't give any indication that some of that might be state funds. So again, just so everyone's aware of all the moving parts, I just maybe make that recommendation. Thank you.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would omit all reference to the South Road underpass since it's not going to be funded by this. But I'm curious, for $30,000, we have a study that's already done this in 2006. It seems like a lot of money to just look at the cost estimate. It's like salary for a year of someone.
$30,000?
First, what we need to do is the firm that did the study has been bought by another firm that could probably do the study. So they have to dig through her history. What they'll do is take a look at what we have come up with, and they'll need to re-estimate. If you look at $150 an hour for an engineer that's a junior engineer out there, it's not many hours. They have to get their permitting people in. They will talk to Amtrak too to make sure that it is still doable in the way we want to do, which is lower the road and not touch the abutments. So there is some money, but we will request for qualifications and then seek proposals from different firms. It could be $15,000. It could be 20. It's that we will sit out. We will seek the engineering firms that are qualified to do this, and then negotiate a price.
Thank you. Representative Bordelon?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I also want to agree with Representative to my left here, Dane, Representative Stevenson. He brings up great points. This is very confusing, the way that it's written. And once again, another study that we're going to try to fund. And how much did we spend in 2000? How much did we spend in 2006?
I don't have that number in front of me. I can get that number.
Right. So, we once again, as a body, could approve funding, and it could sit like this one did since 2006, and we got nothing for it again. I also feel like there should be some coordination with the state, since we have an underpass issue with all the bridges on that side, train, and look at it. It's also in a flood area. All 3 of those areas are in flood zones. And the wording lowering makes me a little concerned with sea rising and flood areas, that how much lower can you go there and how much more flooding? On that road alone, on any given day, if there's flash flooding, there's about sometimes 6 inches of rain underneath that bridge, that pool right past the Union building that all kind of flood out over there. So $30,000 in a year, is it really applicable today? We've been living like this for a while. It seems like we should coordinate better with the state, come up with a plan, have somebody come down here. I also would think that if we already paid for a study in 2006, one would think if you go with the same company, nothing's really changed over there. So they should be able to come back out maybe for less than that, if they, and the study should read the same, I would think. I'd like to move another number. I'd like to move 0 on this, this study. I feel at this time, I mean, we're trying to, once again, keep taking things from the general funds. People need radios, and we got other things that we need to go through. We've been at this for a while, and living in this town that's always been like that, it's always been a problem. I think we can do better coordination with the state and do better coordinating and look at the old CIP approval for funding and see what we can do to rectify it that way, and have more information from the state first before arbitrarily throwing money out and saying, I hope they take the bait, and if they don't, well, there's 30. Thank you.
All right, we have a motion on the floor by Representative Bordelon for 0, and it's been seconded by Representative Kotowski. Thank you. Representative Stevenson?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I would just like to clarify that I support the $30,000 for this project. As an engineer at EB, I understand a lot of times for these large projects, you need to spend the money initially to end up net saving money. When you're going to the state, you are competing with other people who also want money. You got a study that was conducted almost 15 years ago. If someone has a newer study, the value of that study conducted, it doesn't matter how much you spent at it, the people looking to hand out the money is going to see that it's almost 15 years old. There's new considerations, all sorts of other stuff. So I think updating the survey, if that's what we think is for the best for the town, I support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Powers, I'm sorry, you had your hand up before?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Gary, just a quick question. Maybe I heard you wrong, but I thought you said that in order to even get looked at, because the study is so old, we have to do a new study, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And the only other way to, we're talking about lowering the bridge, the only other way to go over it would be go over the top of the railroad bridge. Is that correct? And we're talking like tens of millions of dollars for that. Is that correct?
You can go over the top, or you could request Amtrak to raise the rail lines, and that's 2 miles in each direction, 3 bridges.
Right, and that's a whole federal.
That's federal, and none of us will be alive.
Correct.
Through the permitting process.
And that's the point I'm trying to make. And I mean, I'm not trying to be facetious here about any of this, but
I'm being honest.
in order to even get looked at for this, because we have another railroad bridge where I live that's literally collapsing and falling down, and my mother-in-law constantly calls people about the bridge, because literally you can see it crumbling around us. So to spend the money to get the engineering study, that's the only way we can even attempt to correct the problem. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Burt?
One thing Gary pointed out to me, I was asking him why did we pursue any grant funding in '06 after the earlier study, that lots of dollars weren't available back then. They didn't exist, that grant funding source. So that's one thing that's changed now.
I'm just curious about the idea of lowering roads. Right now, South Road, and I know we're not really discussing it, but even Paquonic Road, both of those roads do flood in heavy storm events. So I don't understand that concept, I guess. Isn't it going to make those roads more vulnerable to flooding by lowering them?
Right now, with what work has been done with the planning department, with the Long Hill drainage study, which was all the improvements, Pequannock Road may flood a little bit, but it doesn't flood as much. The engineer did take a look at it based on all the drainage calculations back then, but now we got climate change, so that's another reason to look at this again, was we could lower the road 2 feet and not affect it. Just like any road during a massive storm, Noah's Ark is going to be coming down the road with the massive flooding that we have, some of the massive storms that we have, but then it goes away. So we want to look at that. I mean, one of the things is just to leave it as is. This is the worst constriction that I can think of on our entire road network, to include intersections with state roads and everything else. So this is one of the items that I brought up to the town manager, is that to look at this. It does cut the town in half. Clarence B. Sharp Highway, people can use that. But there's been too many calls to get trucks unstuck from underneath this bridge. So it was to take a look at this, the several items. So we would have the engineer look at the climate change projections, the Long Hill drainage study that a lot of the developers made improvements on for retaining the water upstream. And so we'll look at all of those items and then go forward with what it is for the cost. South Road does have a pump that the state seems not to be able to maintain well, but it does have a pump structure there and a series of valves. So
I just got to say, I couldn't even get to the finance committee meeting the other day because it was flooded.
Yeah.
And this is just like last week, but that's
So-
fine. We have a number of Representative Wells.
I'm not sure if this applies directly, but in District 5, we have 3 bridges that either need fixing or are suspect. So in looking into it, I look into the state, the grant money for that, and there's a thing called the State Bridge Manual. And I downloaded a copy of it last year, and this year I said, oh, there's a new edition of the State Bridge Manual. So I would be surprised if whatever manual the state puts out for dealing with these issues, it's probably way out of date and may have other small changes that have to be addressed to get funding.
All right, so seeing no more hands in the air, I think we're ready to vote on 0 for CIP 1G road underpasses. All in favor, please say aye.
So that's, oops. No, I need to see, yeah, we're
This is
voting
0.
on 0. Oh, no,
Didn't I
no
say
for
that?
Melendez. So Katowski,
I have my hand up,
Chase, Bordelon, DeSilligan, and Eben. Okay.
Did you get Starkley?
Nope, Starkley, sorry. 6, no, 6 yes.
All opposed, please raise your hand.
Okay.
Any abstentions?
So 6 in
Okay,
favor.
that motion fails.
25.
6 in favor. How many
25,
people are in the
there's
room?
31.
25? 25 opposed, no abstentions. So now we're up to the next number on the floor, which is 30,000. All in favor of that, please raise your hand. All opposed, please raise your hand.
Pasqualini,
I think it's-
Eben, Bordelon, DeSiller,
It's everyone but
Chase.
Stark.
No, we had Pasqualini and took away Starkley. Katowski. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's
That motion passes. I believe it's 26 to 5.
25 to 6.
25 to 6?
Yeah, 25 in
Starkley
favor.
didn't put his
I
hand
know,
up.
but Pasqualini did.
Okay.
So it's 6.
25 to 6, no abstentions. Thank you.
Katowski, Chase, DeSiller, Bordelon, Eben.
Next account is CIP 3A, Mystic Streetscape Phase 3, page 218. Motion was made for $150,000 for CIP 3A by Representative Newsom, seconded by Representative Merritt. Discussion. After completion of Phase 2, the state notified Groton that some funding is available to complete some work started in Phase 1 and Phase 2. 80% of the funding is from a federal highway priority project grant. 20% is matched by the town. Some examples of improvements are improvements to sidewalks. And actually, you can see a list of examples there on page 218, but they include improvements to sidewalks such as Library Street, changes to Allen Street to try to slow traffic, and new waste receptacles downtown. A vote was taken for $150,000 for CIP 3A. The motion carried 3-0-2 with Representative Wells and Representative Stanford abstaining. Sorry. Is there any discussion on these meeting minutes? Madam Moderator, I'd like to make a motion for $150,000 for CIP 3A, Mystic Streetscape Phase 3.
All right, we have a motion on the floor for Mystic Streetscape, CIP 3A, $150,000, made by Representative Newsom, seconded by Representative Bailey. Is there any questions on this one? No? Representative Rogers?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I'm wondering if you can just tell us a little bit about how it was decided what would be included in this project. I'm specifically curious about the memorial at the corner of Route 1 and Library Street. In my notes I wrote, this would be a great Eagle Scout project. Like, it's such a small, tiny little corner of the world. I'm wondering why it's included in this bigger project.
The first thing is what we had done was get with the state of Connecticut, because this comes funds again through the state DOT. And so first we needed a definition of what's Mystic. And we went with them. We looked at several items that we looked to include this little corner, which is the memorial down there that a lot of people drive by, don't realize there's a little memorial down there. It's actually state property. But we included that. We included the staircase that goes from Academy Lane down to Pearl Street. So we included all the sidewalk networks down there. And what we did is we went to the state of Connecticut, and their definition of Mystic kind of matched ours. You could go as far west as like Allen Street, West Mystic, of course Library Street, Route 1, all of those roads, Pearl Street, all of that stuff. Going further south on Route 215, roughly by the Latham Street down there's a little section of sidewalks that we couldn't be done with the money in Phase 2. So we had to find the area with the state DOT. They said that the memorial area could be included because there's sidewalks on both sides. So if you wanted to replace, part of the project was to replace the sidewalks, it could be do some minor stuff to the memorial, which would be probably plantings. There's some arborvitae that's in the rear, so that's why that was included. It doesn't have to be part of the project, but that's what we included in that whole area. So there's a whole list of roads there. We did work with the state DOT for the funds. They do believe there's about $2 million available. The reason it shows 1.6 for construction, because these are federal funds, so the state does include all of their time. They charge their time to it. So I was working with a gentleman up there who said that if funding is available to do the preliminary engineering work, about $150,000 is the right amount of money for what grant money they have with an 80-20 match. So that's why it was included. What we would do is if funding is available, we'd sit through qualifications-based selection, hire an engineering firm to do the design, working with state and federal regulations on this. And what we would do is that we would estimate the cost of all of these projects that we have up there and prioritize them. Maybe the memorial is not the replanting of maybe that could be somebody, an Eagle Scout, or it could be some other committee doing that. But it was really to include everything we know down there. We also tried to look for a piece of land to put the old Mystic Bridge gears, the bridge itself. We have the gears, the old gears that were replaced. They're in storage. We're trying to find a place that would fit down there for historic. We can't find a piece of property big enough that the town owns, so we didn't include that. But we did include some things that were in Phase 1, which is the waste containers. People are running into them. They're overstacking them. So the funds could be available to look at that. So bottom line, long story, we worked with the state of Connecticut, came up with all the little sections down there, and then we would refine those based on input from the public. There will be a public information meeting, and of course cost, and then with the people's input on what should be done.
Representative Richards?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I'm curious, if we decide not to fund this, would that mean we would miss out on the bulk of this federal money?
Yes, and the second person is lining up is Stonington. We were asked first several years ago, and the previous town manager said, let's look at what we can do, use the funds first, so we were asked first. If the funds aren't used in Groton, they will probably be used in the area in Stonington, because they must be used in the Mystic area. It's an earmark. Stonington will be in up the bat.
Representative Bordelon?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I'm actually, someone else was talking about this earlier in one of our discussions, not here, but the fact that there's no recycling downtown Mystic and you have waste receptacles, is there a possibility, like you see a lot of the districts that are, tourist areas where they have the combination trash recyclable combo, that way your trash would not overflow? Is it too late to possibly make that a trash recycling receptacle so that downtown, where you have people walking with plastic bottles and stuff, there is a place to put them, not in the trash?
Okay, by state statute, every garbage can needs to have, in a public area, needs to have a recycling, so we do. We have 55-gallon drums marked recycling, and you are right, people use them for garbage. They stuff everything into it. So the thought process would be to look at some of the other areas that we have. There's what they call, and it's a big belly, it's trash compactors, where there's trash on one side and recyclables on the other, something a little bit more attractive than the 55-gallon drum we have down there. But the place is popping. There's a lot of foot traffic down there. On certain days, it is overflowing. We empty those cans once a day, to include the weekends and holidays. So we will look at that. We look at the other tourist areas, what we can to increase on recycling, to notify people, to make it harder for them to put garbage in the recycling container, because those 55-gallon drums with marked recycling with a little flap on them, they just put anything in them. But yes, bottom line.
Representative?
Can I just answer that? Where are these, I guess I'm not familiar with them, I guess, because like most places have these attractive, like garbage can recyclable, like combo. Where are the recycling? I guess I must have missed it.
All of our cans are down there. They look like one's a 55-gallon drum painted green with a top on it.
So they're not on the main road where people are walking?
Oh,
so
yes.
They are?
Wherever there's a garbage can, there is a recycling container, but they look like a garbage can. They say recycling on them. It doesn't work. People just, we're just lucky people put it in a can, but that's wrong.
In 1954, Old Mystic held its 300th birthday celebration in Mystic. I guess there's no room for the parade up there. So we're somewhat, I'm feeling a little neglected because nobody seems to, they're looking west to Allen Street and south somewhere looking, and I'm wondering if there's any consideration to looking north. I have the Stonington, you mentioned Stonington's looking to grab some funds. I have their proposed budget for, this is for fiscal year 21, so it's not this year. They're looking at $500,000 for Mystic Streetscape, $400,000 for Old Mystic Streetscape. The following year, 22, they're looking for $1.1 million for Mystic, $800,000 for Old Mystic, and the same the next year, and then going out into the land of fantasy, $1.1 million for Mystic and $200,000 for Old Mystic. Now, I'm assuming Old Mystic probably includes from the cemetery up through past 95, but they've done some work on sidewalks on Main Street, which is actually Main Street Mystic is located in Old Mystic. And so I'm just wondering, you mentioned, are you going to be looking north?
There are CAP projects. One is a sidewalk replacement coming up that is seeking funds to address the sidewalk failure we have up in that area. But there hasn't been anything to install new sidewalks or to replace any of the existing, and there's very little in the Old Mystic area that we have. So there isn't, but we did get with the state of Connecticut here, and they said, West Mystic roughly up to I-95. That was their definition in Groton for the Mystic area. I know the Seaport did get money for it. That was the first phase. So we can ask if there's a project, if there's any more funds out there. I will ask this gentleman if there's any more federal funds out there that could address other areas in town. But what he had told us for this earmark was the Mystic area.
Representative Katowski.
Thank you. I know you probably said it. I think I missed it. Why are these funds just for Mystic? Because it seems like this is an awful lot of money, and Mystic is fine. And there's a lot of other places in town that probably are more in need.
Earmark, it was for the Mystic area, so
How does something get for the Mystic area?
I didn't start the funding way back when. It's just that these are the funds, so if the town doesn't want to use it in the Mystic area, and we're not making up a project, we have sidewalks that should be replaced, they're deteriorating. This is an opportunity to use those funds, but they can't be used any other place other than the Mystic area. That's what the federal earmark was.
But I don't understand the why behind it has to be Mystic. It can't be Groton.
Apparently, the federal funding is earmarked for that.
Well, how do you get an earmark? I mean, Mystic is a zip code and a state of mind. It's not a real town. So how do you get an
It's
earmark?
a village.
Fire district.
It is a sub-district.
Fire district.
That money was earmarked over 10 years ago. It'd be by assuming a congressman. That's typically, they no longer do earmarks, but back in the day, I've had several earmarks at other places. But once it's specified, you're locked into that purpose.
Okay.
Part of the streetscape.
Representative Gustafson?
Thank you. So just for clarification, the 150,000 represents 20% of the cost of the project?
No, that's just that's a preliminary engineering and surveying. So then there's the final engineering, and then there's construction management. But we'd be on the if all the agreements are signed, there's a step process. If these funds are approved, the town will enter into an agreement with the state, with the whole policy and the process and that. So this number will change up and down. What we feel is a solid number is a $1.6 million for construction, which is a 80-20 split. So the number we see in that first line there is really the 20% town match total.
All right. And on separately, are there any talks between Groton and the state as far as reconfiguring the exit ramp at exit 89 on Town Street? There's like accidents on a daily basis over there. I don't know if there's anything in the future.
I think there has been studies done about putting even a traffic signal up there.
It's not really pertinent to this motion. If we could just keep going, because we're after 10 at this point. So, Representative Whitney?
Now that I realize this is federal earmark money, I'll say that I live in a Deerfield Ridge Drive, and my zip code is 06355, which is Mystic, now Old Mystic, and that's recognized by the federal government. And what I'd like to see is a sidewalk running along the length of Allen Street down Cowell Hill Road to 184, because I think we have a major problem in this town that we have sidewalks that sort of go to nowhere, or ones that no longer go anywhere because they're closed. And to have connectivity between big neighborhoods and downtown Mystic, which would be walkable, bikeable, would be wonderful. I think that'd be much more useful than, say, repairing bridge stairs they didn't even know existed. Thank you.
All right. Any other thoughts? We have a motion on the floor for $150,000 for Mystic Streetscape Phase 3. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that motion passes, 30 in favor, 1 opposed. It's after 10 o'clock, so I want to get a sense of, we need to have a majority in favor of moving forward. It's unlikely we're not even to where we were supposed to be at our last meeting, so luckily I think what we're going to do is utilize the 13th, which is next Monday as well. I think we're going to do that. So we can keep plugging away if you want to do the next one in sidewalks, or we could quit right now. So I'm going to ask for a vote. Who would like to stay for one more CIP? Please raise your hand. Who is opposed to that? All right. Let's. I'm just trying to chip away. And so I just want to ask one more quick vote. I'm assuming then that people want to quit after one CIP. So who would like to quit? Who would like to keep going and do all the CIPs? Who would like to go home after one CIP? All right, so we're going to do one more CIP. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. CIP 3B, replacement sidewalk construction on page 219. Motion was made for $182,000 for CIP 3B by Representative Newsom, seconded by Representative Massett. Discussion, this funding is primarily for replacement sidewalk construction. Some funding will go to rebuild an ADA compliant ramp at Quantic Plains Park. $55,000 will be used for engineering and permits to replace sidewalk over the stream on Route 184 there between Pumpkin Hill Road and the entrance to the Haley Brook condominiums. Based on the engineering work, a cost for the construction in the FYE 2021 budget will be developed. Vote was taken. Hang on a second. Vote was taken for $182,000 for CIP 3B. Motion passed unanimously, 5-0 to 0. Is there any discussion on the meeting minutes?
Well, I have a question because on the sheet, I have 150 for this one as the RTM committee number.
So that's the thing, I wrote 150 in my meeting minutes, which would have come from my notes. But the number in the book is 182, which I believe was the town council number, was it not?
Yes.
So
So your
that's
minutes
the
are-
right number.
So your minutes
My
are
minutes are
incorrect.
incorrect.
Okay, thank you.
And
So
I've already
please amend
noted
your- yes.
that my minutes are incorrect.
All right, so we have a motion. So I don't think you.
Don't tempt me. So if there's no other discussion, I'd like to make a motion on the floor for $182,000 for CIP.
Do you have a question on
sorry.
the minutes? We have
3B.
one more question on the
I'm
minutes, sorry.
Go ahead.
When you made your list of projects, did you include the Gold Star Highway? Did I miss that?
Yeah.
No, did you have it in your minutes? I just wondering if you
No,
have.
it's not in my minutes.
Was it, oh,
No, what was on?
should it have been?
No, just what's in 3B.
That isn't 3B.
If it says in 3B, we may have discussed it. We went over several things pretty quickly, and I was typing quickly, but I don't recall us mentioning that. Let's see.
So is it a part of this?
Yeah, it is.
Oh, thank you.
It is.
Thank you.
Yeah. $55,000 to begin addressing the 150 distressed areas.
Another question on the
Right.
minutes? Oops, sorry.
Well, I mean,
Representative Casper, are you talking about the minutes?
yes, we were talking about the minutes, right?
Just asking Representative Casper. That-
Only if he mentions Cliff Street.
It's there.
It should be Clift.
Yeah, it's spelled wrong.
Well, okay, so that's for $30,000. That's one of the things. So there was a series of sidewalk projects that were discussed, in addition to the work that had to be done at Quantic Plains Park. There was a little bit of discussion about Midway Oval, but that was pretty brief. So what should be done to change the minutes? Because I have a $55,000 used for, let's see, 55. I had $55,000 for the that area, that sidewalk on 184. We didn't. I don't think we particularly talked about Cliff Street as much, or did we, Gary? I don't remember.
It was.
I don't have it written down.
It was just briefly mentioned. You know, it went through everything, so it was just briefly mentioned and included
You can add a
everything.
I can
general
add it.
phrase like "and other streets" as identified in the CIP
Sure.
description.
Okay.
All right, so we have minutes and we've had some discussion. I think we can move forward.
If there are no other questions, I'll make a motion for $182,000 for CIP 3B replacement sidewalk construction.
All right, we have a motion on the floor for CIP 3B, replacement sidewalk construction, made by Representative Newsom for $182,000 and seconded by Representative Bailey. Are there any questions on this? Representative McDermott.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Gary, what's the material that's going to be used for the sidewalks over towards Fort Rachel, and is it going to be asphalt or is it going to be concrete?
Okay, for Fort Rachel, those will be concrete sidewalks.
Good. Thank you.
Representative Whitney.
First, I entirely support the planning process to replace the sidewalk that's no longer usable near Haley Brook condominiums. But I have a question about Cliff Street near the intersection of Gravel Street, those 80 feet. Is there something that makes that particularly urgent? Are they in a really bad shape? Because it seems like that could be included as one of the possible projects on the Mystic Streetscape.
That was a sidewalk where there was one incident already where there was an injury and there was a suit brought against the town. The outcome of that, I do not know. I've asked for this repair for the last 3 years to be done. We have currently patched the concrete sidewalk with asphalt. Right now, it needs to be replaced. So the like material that we have down is concrete with concrete. So that's what we're planning on doing down in that section. And concrete curb.
Do we have a payment in lieu of like a payment in lieu of sidewalks type of fund here in the town?
There's an ordinance to benefit assess.
So
I've been here 35 years and that has never been brought up.
Never been used?
Never been
for a
used.
developer?
For a developer,
That's what
a developer installs the sidewalks at their cost.
Yeah, but sometimes they squeeze out of it because they say there's not connectivity or they negotiate without doing it. And so many communities have payment in lieu of sidewalk where they create a fund that can be tapped for things like this. I'm particularly looking at Haley Brook condominiums and wondering why that developer didn't put in a sidewalk.
They deteriorated.
Oh, it deteriorated. Okay.
He did, and it deteriorated.
And the sidewalk up there, the planning commission required that developer to install that sidewalk. The sidewalk was installed over the brook that's there. What's happening is water's coming off the road, over the sidewalk, and undermining the thing. The reason it's going to cost about $460,000 is not the sidewalk. It's the repair of what damage is being done there. How do you stabilize a brook? It's real easy. I'm a civil engineer. You put gabions in, it's real simple. You just go do it. Not in this day and age. So it's permitting and everything else under the sun that we need to go through. It's been estimated at about $460,000 for that repair. Ouch.
Representative Pasqualini?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. And that comes along with my question. Because zoning requires it, we should be doing the inspection to make sure they're done properly, because now we're fit with the bill. So zoning makes either commercial or residential put in sidewalks, but we should be inspected to make sure it's up to our engineering standards if we're going to end up accepting them and then pay $500,000 to fix it.
Yeah. There is an inspection process, usually with roads and sidewalks that are developed. How old are those sidewalks at Haley Brook condos?
15 years?
10, 15 years? Probably closer to 15. That's kind of all a blur.
But we wouldn't have had them.
All right, we have a motion. Representative Katowski?
I have a quick question, just because Representative McDermott asked about it. Gold Star Highway is getting concrete, not asphalt, right?
Correct. The same material that's there. It's like replacement with like material.
All right, we have a motion on the floor for $182,000. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion passes. 31 in favor, 0 opposed. So we can recess at this time? Is that the body's decision? Yes. Yes, I hear yes. All right, we're going to recess then until Wednesday evening. Now, Wednesday is a regular RTM meeting, so we will start at 7 o'clock with a regular RTM meeting.
You want to finish his accounts then?
And we can finish Gary's accounts then, I guess, yeah.
Is that good?
Is that good or no good?
Day after tomorrow? You wouldn't be, yeah, so the meeting, regular meeting first, and you wouldn't get to the account till like 8 or 8:15.
We can put yours off until Monday the 13th with the what? Let's just do that. We'll put those off until the 13th, and on Wednesday, please arrive for a 7:30 meeting. Usually there's a caucus at 7, and it looks like we're taking up education and the education CIPs on Wednesday, which is probably good enough for our body at this point.
So we're not following.
I think
13th.
I think I'd like to put those off till the 13th, if that's okay. If something is not able to be, just let me know. We could probably stick it in on Wednesday.
So what are we starting with?
Excuse me?
What are we starting with the next meeting? Is it education?
The next
The
meeting
same as the
is
schedule.
Wednesday. We have an agenda. It says education and the education CIPs. We're going to go with that.
Yeah, after the regular meeting, you'll have your
And then we're going to
accounts.
add a meeting on the 13th, so please, it should have been already secured in your calendars, because I did put it on my original email to you guys, but I feel like I'd rather pace ourselves than having really long nights. That's okay.
It works better that way.
Representative Bailey?
Make a motion to
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor? Any opposed? Okay, we're recessed till Wednesday. Thank you for that.